Picture a highly organized, enclosed city. You have a central town hall calling the shots, a strict perimeter wall deciding what gets in, and power stations keeping everything running. A eukaryotic cell operates exactly like that. Looking at this animated diagram on the left, we can use an animal cell as our baseline model. It contains the standard operating system required for all eukaryotic life. Inside, you have the nucleus, which acts as the control center holding the cell's DNA. Wrapping around the outside is the cell membrane, acting as a strict boundary to control exactly what enters and leaves. The remaining space is filled with cytoplasm, a jelly-like interior where most chemical reactions take place. Scattered throughout are the mitochondria, the power stations that release energy, and tiny ribosomes that serve as factories to build proteins. These 5 parts, nucleus, membrane, cytoplasm, mitochondria, and ribosomes, form the mandatory core architecture required for any eukaryotic cell to function and survive. Now let's look at the plant cell, drawn here as a rectangular shape on the right. The rule for this module is simple. Plant cells have everything animal cells have, plus a few specialized extras. We can see that rule in action. The plant cell populates its own nucleus, membrane, cytoplasm, mitochondria, and ribosomes. The baseline engine is exactly the same. But plants need structure to stand upright, so they add a rigid cell wall. This outer layer is made of cellulose and provides structural support to prevent the cell from bursting. They also add chloroplasts to carry out photosynthesis and a large permanent vacuole filled with cell sap to keep the whole cell firm. Organizing cell anatomy this way shows how a plant cell is equipped for its environment. First, by establishing the universal tools of life, then adding the specific hardware needed to stay upright and make its own food. This brings us to a common misconception we call the instead of trap. The flawed logic goes like this. Because plants can make their own food, they don't need to process it. People mistakenly assume plant cells have chloroplasts instead of mitochondria. This flowchart corrects that logic. Plants actually must do both. The chloroplasts build the glucose, but that glucose feeds directly into the mitochondria, which release the usable energy. Both parts are required. Before we apply this to a real scenario, let's actively categorize the 8 structures we just covered. Pause the video. Looking at the 8 subcellular structures on screen, sort them into 2 columns, in both cells and in plant cells only. These 2 columns separate the universal engine from the specialized add-ons. Defining this boundary allows you to identify any eukaryotic cell by isolating what's unique rather than what's common. Let's test that logic with a diagnostic scenario. A scientist looks through this microscope lens and identifies 4 specific structures: a nucleus, mitochondria, ribosomes, and a cell wall. Based strictly on this specific combination of structures, is the scientist looking at a plant cell or an animal cell? The nucleus, mitochondria, and ribosomes are all universal to both cell types. Because they appear in every eukaryotic cell, they are useless for distinguishing one from the other. The identification relies entirely on the final item. Since animal cells never possess a cell wall, its presence confirms that this specimen is a plant cell. Returning to our complete side-by-side models, the visual logic holds up. Understanding eukaryotic cells relies on seeing them as layered systems. They start with a shared biological engine for basic survival and bolt on specialized hardware for specific survival needs.